neighbors are not. Yeah. Yes.
I only know words I shouldn't say. I'm very million in public.
Judy.
Yeah, that makes
Good evening. Welcome you to the Planning Commission meeting for August 20, 2025. Our first item, we generally look at reviewing the minutes from prior meeting. In this case, we don't have any minutes to review. We'll do those at the next meeting. So we'll move to general public comment. Now, we've got two items on the agenda this evening. And so there's going to be opportunities to talk throughout the meeting, in this meeting. This opportunity is for something that's perhaps not germane to these two projects, but issues or concerns or just statements you wanted to say. This is the time to come forward, give us your name and address, and give them 3 minutes to speak your mind. Otherwise, if there's nothing other than what's on the agenda, we could move forward. So anyone wishing to take advantage of this?
I'm going to address this is Carl Greening, 5436 English Hills, citizen of Walker.
Sorry to interrupt, but this is for general public comments, so not related to either issues on the agenda.
Oh, it's
but there
not.
will be a portion that it will be open to the public to speak.
Okay.
Just not right now. This is prior to
Never mind,
items
Carl.
on the list.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Misunderstood.
Did that.
All right, first item on the agenda then is case number 24-015. This is preliminary area site plan review for Lumiere condominiums. And I'm going to turn it over to Pono Prevey. She's a planning director, and she will bring us up to date on what's transpired since the last meeting when the PAFP was taken.
Thank you, Chair. I'll pull the proposed PSP up on the screen here for review while giving my comments. What? Oh, they turned. Apologies, the screens turned themselves off. So we'll get that fixed. I'll continue with my comments, and the site plan should come up on the screen in just a moment. Thank you. This project was first heard by the Planning Commission at the May 21st meeting. We gave an overview of the project, staff, the developer, the public hearing was open and then closed, discussion, and the project was ultimately tabled. And I'm just going to read what was in the tabling motion so we all have the same information. Based on the application material provided, the project moved to table the PASP for the development, subject to the following conditions. The developer and the current HOA work with the current HOA to come to an agreement allowing the developer's access to English Hills Drive in a form satisfactory to the city attorney, and a study of an alternative second access to access the property. Those were the items in the tabling motion from May. The applicant provided several items with their resubmission, including this updated PASP that's on the screen today, as well as a summary and the minutes from a meeting held in late July with the English Hills and English Ridge condominium boards, and a draft agreement that those three groups came up with for shared drive access. It's a preliminary draft agreement. It's not signed by any of the groups at this time, and it is in the packet. So moving on, the access to the development was one of the primary concerns in the initial discussion. Part of that is that the applicant asserted that they have rights to share access to the private drive through English Hills and English Ridge condominiums, and the board had asked for information from the city attorney as to an interpretation of those rights. And so that is included in the packet as well. It's a 2-page memo from the city attorney discussing this very topic. Oh my God. Sorry. And so there is feedback from the city attorney. They state, based on the review, the development property has a reasonable claim and legal argument to support pedestrian and vehicular access to 4 Mile. And then they proposed 2 conditions if the board were to move the project forward. They proposed 2 conditions of approval that would help ensure that the development always has 2 access points in perpetuity, and that can't be undone at some point if the board were to move forward. And then moving on to staff comments. There are several points in the city's ordinance, the zoning ordinance, where that need for safe access is called out. One of them is section 13.036, and that's where cul-de-sacs or dead-end streets containing, so the following standards shall apply to developments containing at least 25 housing units. Dead-end and cul-de-sac streets with only one point of entry shall not serve more than 25 dwelling units. Currently, both the residential neighborhood here, the Coventry and Ipswich, has more than 25 units on one access point. The English Hills and English Ridge condominiums have more than 25 units on one access point. And so neither of those would be developed as they are today with just that single access point. They were developed legally under previous earlier versions of the city zoning ordinance. So there's not an issue with those as they are today, although they are not in accordance with the current ordinance. But any new development must meet those. And so it's not a case of if this development went from 30 to 25, it would be okay. Both of the accesses it's using have more than 25, so this must have more than 2. It can't be a single access point according to our ordinance. And then another section is in the list of standards for the Planning Commission when reviewing and approving a PASP. This is found in section 1102C7 of the ordinance, and discusses that proposed developments must be adequately served by public facilities and services such as highways, streets, police and fire protection, etc. And that the location of proposed uses, the layout of the site, and its relation to streets giving access to it shall be such that traffic to, from, and within the site, assembly of persons in connection therein will not be hazardous or inconvenient to the surrounding area. And so those are just 3 of the times that our ordinance discusses the importance of the connectivity and the safe access and the need for the street network around to be able to carry the additional traffic. And so what you see on the PASP here, the changes from the previous version, they added a sign toward the front and a speed table stating that it's a private community for no through traffic at the Ipswich cul-de-sac. And over here, on the west side where the proposed development would connect to English Hills Drive, it's noted as an emergency exit only with a 16-foot emergency access lane, and then some traffic calming by plantings nearby to just slow traffic down. I also prepared for the board this overview. I apologize, there's a lot of things happening here, but this was my attempt to show the context of this project with the surrounding project. So what you see here overlaid on the English Hills, former English Hills Golf Course, is the approved FASP for the English Hills apartments. That is currently a little bit in flux. The extension was granted to the new owners at the previous meeting, and they will bring in an iteration of this with their own building product, which is slightly different than this one, but the bones would be similar. And then here is the proposed development we're discussing tonight in between the Coventry Ipswich neighborhood and the English Ridge, English Hills. So this is approximately how it would fit in context to the rest of the development that is already existing or already approved for the area. Just some context there. And my report ends that while the developer has made significant headway working on an agreement for shared road maintenance with the English Hills and English Ridge condominiums, the end result is a proposal for an emergency access lane only. I do not believe this proposed solution adequately meets the ordinance requirements for sufficient redundant secondary access. But I cannot recommend approval at this time. And so that's what I have for the board. I'm happy to pull up other things or answer questions that you may have, but we discussed kind of the overall layout of this development at the previous meeting, so I didn't want to rehash all of that, but mostly just focus on the new items and ultimately to give some context to my recommendation.
Thank you, Paula. Commissioners, any questions? Okay. Scott Connors, City Engineer.
You know, I didn't actually put together a new report. This came in very late in the week, and the agenda was already put together, and the boards were going out. So I did talk to Paula, and I fully support her comments and recommendation for the slight change that was added to the plan. So I'm here for because you folks got a tough decision, and I'll be here to answer questions if I can.
Okay, any questions for Scott? At this point, could we have a representative from the applicant here to give us your name and address and bring us up to date on the 2 items that we asked for you to take a look at in preparation for tonight's meeting.
Sure. Matt Frayne, 3440 Johnson Street, Marne. We were commissioned with 2, and that was 2 things, and one was other access points to this development. I did go and meet with the long-term care facility with, I believe her name is Amber, and I can't force somebody to write an email no matter how many emails or phone calls I make, but I did have a sit-down conversation with them, and they were not interested at all at sharing any of their access information. So I was not able to get an email from her. Very nice, very good conversation, just that's what she told me verbally. Second point, meeting with the HOAs, we've worked with them extensively. I think we've had three meetings, or was it 4 meetings? 3 meetings where we've sat down and worked on access, safety, concerns, and these were good meetings that we've had. And over all of it, we've come up with, the engineers put up here as a fire path, what we call a choke lane, to try to limit traffic and slow traffic down between the 2 developments and discourage traffic. And we've exhausted multiple items as all of us have gotten together. And this is after hours and hours of conversation, and there is some reference to this in your books of these are possible methods. We've implemented them in the plan for safety, security, and slow traffic and to limit traffic and make it uncomfortable. So they call it choking, and they call it side friction. So anytime you come into a path, even though it's wide, is what you're used to, it shrinks in. For example, the Bristol Bridge, we talked about that. It's a little wider now, but we all know where the Bristol Bridge is, right? Similar concept, that worked for hundreds of cars a day for years. We're trying to do the same thing here, just to really limit what happens here. Is it one way? I would say it's not one way. You just have to see another car coming, slow down, stop, and let that car through as you go.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if you don't stop, you're gonna get a head-on collision. So it worked for the Bristol Bridge for years with hundreds of cars every day. And so that is what we're trying to implement here. But we understand that there might be some limitations with engineering and that kind of thing. And so we're trying to answer and help the situation, but zoning is kind of handcuffing us a little bit on what we can and can't do. So that's where we're standing right now.
Now, I think as I recall from the last meeting for the tabling, and it was pointed out by Paula, that there were two items, the agreement working with the HOA and a development study of possible alternate access routes. So all we don't have anything in writing, we don't have a sketch plan of an alternate. You just indicated that you talked to English Hills. They weren't interested in working with you, and so that was the extent of it.
I talked to the long-term care facility who shares our northern border, and that would be the only one, or you have Oak Ridge Apartments. Yeah, Old Orchard Apartments, which was not an option. We talked to the long-term care facility, and she's told me multiple times she was gonna write an email, and she has not.
Okay. Okay, so that's your report back to us on
Correct.
this matter. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, the public hearing on this project was closed. But in the meantime, since the last meeting, we've had a number of communications, either emails or written comments that have been submitted to city staff. There were at least 3 emails that were addressed to us individually as planning commissioners. And I think there was one that was addressed to us as planning commissioners and also copied to city staff. So we've gotten feedback over this time period as far as what the issues are. And I think the focus, as was identified in the tabling that took place back in May, is confirming that there's a legal standing that the developer has as far as using the existing access way to get into the property. And I believe that that's been confirmed by the city attorney that it appears to give them standing to do that. But what we're still looking at are the issues that we've talked about in terms of the existing development, where it's a private road, but it has no sidewalks. There's the geometrics of it aren't consistent with requirements for public streets, for public movement, and there's no sidewalk there. And so what the proposal is to go through that area that doesn't have what we generally look for public streets, although they are looking at something comparable to that within this phase that they propose to the city. So at this point, looking, fellow commissioners here, any reactions as far as, is there still a concern with those two issues that were outlined in the reason for the tabling? Have they concerns with regard to one, the development agreement? And two, on the desirability and its conformance with our zoning standards?
Yes, there's concern about it.
In terms of,
Both those things.
okay, so there are still concerns that you have with,
Yes.
with the proposal at hand?
Yes.
Jason, any?
Something I'm a little, I guess, perplexed on is that these meetings were held and supposedly there's common ground found between both groups here, but we still received a lot of feedback against this. So I'm a little confused on which way people are going here.
We were forced to.
Okay, all right, thank you. Rob?
Yeah, I still have concerns on both of them.
Okay, Pat?
Yeah, my observation, or at least my perspective on this, is even if not a single shovel of dirt gets turned, you got two neighborhoods with very limited accessibility for certainly fire, emergency, police. I think the English Hill condo, about 56 units, if I counted correctly. Coventry and the Ipswich area, that's about 96. And then the proposed development would be an additional 30. But even if you don't add the proposed development, both of these areas are kind of isolated for emergency purposes. And I don't think they're compliant with what the city requires at this time. And going forward, my big question is, with the English Hills condos, and that's a very beautiful area, does it have to be a through street? Can it be accessible for those services, emergency, fire and the like? Can it be accessible for that, but it doesn't have to be a through street? In other words, can we post it at near 4 Mile, not a through street? And can we do the same thing on the Ipswich end, or the Coventry, saying basically no outlet, and already there's an access point between the two?
As private developments, they can post signs similar to that. The English Hills, English Ridge, if you drive into that street, you'll see a sign, very similar sign already there. That those are private roads, that there's no outlet. And that's proposed for the new development as well, just onto the public street after the proposed Ipswich cul-de-sac. But you can't, according to the city zoning ordinance, you can't gate developments in Walker. So the signs are the best you can do, and that does deter some traffic, but it's not a hard stop, if that makes sense.
Sir.
Okay, thank you, Pat. All right.
Well, as far as access goes, you know, if the city attorney green lights it, I'm not a lawyer, so I'll let them duke it out if there's disagreement there. But the issue of multiple access and cut-throughs, this really doesn't do anything for me. You know, signs are nice, narrow streets, and signs, you know, they don't have teeth. So effectively, this seems like a very marginal improvement, if any.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Delaney?
I think that we need to be careful to allowing that we need to have the two full lanes of traffic. There's a reason that we decided that when we did zoning and that area to allow for that through traffic, just because there is that many vehicles on either side and stuff, and to allow that through access for emergency vehicles and stuff. So I understand the concern with not having 2 lanes and only one. Yeah, that's what happened at Bristol, but that's the reason why we fixed it, is because it caused a lot of issues. So we don't want to create more pinch points when we don't have to. Yes, it slows down traffic, but it also creates a lot of more issues too.
If I could, at this point, Scott and Paula, they proposed this one-way and kind of back down. And I believe you both have indicated that you don't see that as a satisfactory solution to this. If there's going to be movement through that pinch point there, that it should have a two-lane roadway. Is that correct?
Yes, that's my interpretation of the zoning ordinance. It doesn't, at no point does it expressly say you can't have a narrow kind of neck down driveway. It must be 2 full lanes. That's not in the ordinance. But I do believe that is the intent of the ordinance as you see it written in multiple areas.
And I would say that I certainly support that opinion, that it doesn't meet the intent of the ordinance. There was a little discussion there about some items, traffic calming items that we shared. And some of the condo association folks did reach out to us, and we had a traffic calming program proposed about 18 years ago. It was never got off the ground. It was never approved. So they're just random documents about traffic calming. And some of those talked about the benefit for narrowing side friction. I think putting trees along the sides and things like that. But we wouldn't be in support of narrowing those lanes to prohibit it down to 1 lane. It's not just about emergency access. If you're going to add 30 more lots in here, then it's about redundant access. So that if traffic's backed up on Coventry, I mean, an ambulance or fire truck's one thing, but we still care about the residents that live in there and them getting in and out. And if it's bad every single time, we want to make sure they have a second way. And we still don't have that.
Thank you.
Can I try one more thing here?
Sure, Mark.
Paul, do you remember off the top of your head the number of units that are approved for this larger development?
For the English Hills Golf Course rezone?
Yeah.
550, there's proposed to be apartments.
Gotcha. So every single one of those people who wants to get to Alpine is going to be taking the shortcut. So even if there's no cut there, there's another 500. There's another 500 people. I'm being rhetorical. I shouldn't look at you when I said it. But even if it was perfectly effective at full on cut through, you have that as well, which is certainly a concern.
I probably should point out too, because we've got a lot of new planning commissioners, the layout that's on the screen right now is just part of the picture for the Northridge and Corliss connection. So that cul-de-sac that's in the middle of that development is intended to connect in with Northridge over at Bristol, so that development has really good redundant access to both Alpine Avenue to the east and to other parts throughout the city to the west. So Northridge has been a huge success for us in creating that redundant access, alternates for the highway. Super important right now, as you can see, with some highway work going on. And so that it's an important thing to point out, I think.
Okay, at this point, we still have concerns with what's being proposed to provide access to that new development, and likewise what the other impacts it will have on those that are along the first 2 condo phases, as well as for the neighborhood to the north, southeast. And it's not like it's the case, well, we got a proposal in front of us that it's not supported by staff. I think, I know myself, I've got concerns about adding more traffic to go through those first two phases of condos. And it's got, the roadway is not very comfortable. You don't have, and its geometrics aren't consistent with moving through an area safely and and you have no sidewalk through there. So even though the information that's been submitted concerning the development, developer and the HOA, as far as reaching an agreement on how to share the cost of things and the maintenance of it, it still doesn't address the safe movement of people through that area. Whether those that are there already, it has the potential of adding more traffic there. And even for those that would be part of this development, which in terms of the development that they're proposing, it looks like it's a very good project. Helps the people in the community provide housing. But on the other hand, its impact on the surrounding area as one of the planning commissioners, my opinion right now is we've got a project that really has enough downsides to it that something different has to come forward.
Yes.
Amen.
I agree with that. Now, part of this, and we've got part of the information that we've had provided to us has questioned what our requirements are. At the time this English Hills was initially developed, there wasn't a need for second means of access. But over time, and that was back in our early 2000s, we didn't have those any specific restrictions on interconnections like this. Now it's the case where if there is more development here, you need that second point of access, and but it still requires that that development and the access to it is in the public good. And that's where I'm coming from, that I don't think that what's been proposed for access, even though they did check with neighboring property owners, and there is right of access to that property. The plan with the number of units it has and its interconnections with the existing developments adjacent to it, this plan doesn't meet the ordinance. But that's my opinion on that. This is something that we as a commission have to deliberate on and decide whether that's representative of our collective position or whether there's something here that we're missing and that, or that you otherwise feel that they've met those requirements. Just looking for feedback.
I was just talking with them. I didn't know if so once with the public opinion, is that closed then, or is that not being reopened?
Well, the public hearing is closed. So at this point, and really the focus of this tabling was to look at these two specific issues. And so as we're looking at these two specific issues, I think the consensus is that
Sure. I was looking for next steps here. Would next steps be looking for a vote or a motion?
That's up to the board. It could be, absolutely.
I'm just trying to see our options here.
yes, sir.
We were tasked with a task of alternate entrances, which we couldn't get a letter saying no, that we couldn't, but I got a strong verbal.
You can come to
Yeah,
the
sure.
podium, please.
We were tasked with two tasks, and the task was alternate entrances to the property, and I got a strong no on the one option that we have. The other task was to establish with the HOAs a road maintenance agreement that would be all right to move forward with your council's permission. I read the motion right, it says by approval or approved by our township attorney.
All such agreements, it's a very common procedure that agreements, so similar agreements related to development are prepared that they get reviewed by the city attorney to make sure they cover all the items that the city needs to see covered. The city attorney doesn't write them or dictate them, they review as prepared. And so the draft that was provided, if it's approved, will then be reviewed by the city attorney. That's what that means.
So.
Understand.
So the effect of that is that it confirmed from the city attorney's opinion that there was you had standing in terms of making use of that existing roadway. And you want to step further and reach a private agreement between yourself and those condo associations in place as to how maintenance would be addressed going forward.
Correct, and that's what we were tasked with.
Yeah, but the reason for the second part of it was to see what alternate access routes are there. And you're indicating that there aren't other options. So we're pretty much left with the plan with the modifications that you've proposed as part of that for our consideration.
Right.
So that's where we are right now.
So under the previous plan that we submitted last time, your planning director actually recommended approval for that plan. The main change that we've made is the choking point. So I would like to say, please table this. I will resubmit the plan that she said that she would love to approve. I'm not going to put words in wrong. That she said at the last hearing that she would approve. That she recommended for approval, and then go from there.
Okay, it's a case
You have a lot of people here that are pretty opinionated on it too, and I'm just as passionate for this project too. Because I feel I have a piece of property that is zoned to be this. I have, your planning director has said, under the previous one, she didn't have an issue. She would have, she recommended to the planning commission for approval. And now we're getting, I don't know where the temptation to deny it is coming from.
Well, it's a case where we look for that information as a commission to see whether or not our job is to represent the community on whether a project that's submitted to the city meets the ordinance standards. And some of those standards are cut and dry. Others are determination, in this case, of the relative impact on the surrounding area. And taking into account existing conditions and what's being proposed, and making a determination whether or not we collectively decide to approve the plan that's submitted to us.
I understand. Thank you. But I'm willing to make the compromise to get rid of the choking point. Go back to the original one that recommended for approval.
Okay. Well, what was before us right now is an application for a preliminary area site plan for this new phase.
Right.
And if we feel that it checks all the boxes, we take action accordingly. If we feel that there's some deficiencies, we should identify those. And in any action that's taken, whether we support the proposal or not, or whether it not be undertaken. Rob?
Yeah, I just, I do have a process question, and that is, I think some of these folks thought there would be an opportunity to speak to it, and I understand that your ruling is that the public hearings before, but I think if they'd known that, they would have spoken at the preliminary comment. So at least the gentleman that stood up, you may want to give him your discretion. But with respect to the merits, my recollection was that there was at best ambiguity as to the legal ability of the applicant to use that private street. And so in my mind, well, there's a legal question here. You got to resolve that first of all. And apparently they have come to an agreement on that point.
No, we've not.
Oh, well, maybe I'm assuming that. But even beyond that, I had, at the last hearing, I had concerns about using Ipswich. I really wanted to look at, and maybe I'm not an architect or a designer or a planner, but one comment, one conversation where someone said no, is that the only possible second access? So I'm still, I appreciate it, and I understand people won't, they may or may not follow up with writing an email, but I may be uncomfortable with it if that's the only second access point anyway. So I don't think even if there were an agreement with the HOA, I'm not real comfortable having that. I think it's going to be a drive-through, and it's going to generate huge traffic, and I think there'll be damage to the surrounding community. So I don't want us to give the impression that, hey, if you do this, you're golden, because I still have some residual. I don't have to necessarily get to the merits because of the comments our planning director has suggested that access means access, not, there is a way to get through there. To me, if the purpose is so that emergency vehicles can easily access in response to an emergency, well, gates and even impediments, I'm not sure that qualifies. That was the intent of the ordinance. So I'm rambling and I apologize, but I'm still not convinced that if you do X, Y, and Z, it'll get me away, yes.
With regard to public comment, because the reason for the tabling was very specific, felt that if we got that information, but if there's a desire to reopen the public hearing to get additional comment on anything new that you could offer to the conversation, I think that's at the discretion of us as the commission.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would move that we open public comment limited to, please limit your comments to the new information, because if not, then we'll have to move to close because we don't want to go through everything we went through the last time. So let's focus on just the new information tonight.
Is there support?
I'll support that.
Okay, motion and support to reopen the public hearing, provided the commentary that we take in is responsive to that additional information that was discussed this evening. All those in favor indicate by saying yes.
Say aye.
Yes. Those opposed? Okay, we're going to reopen we need a motion to reopen public. Okay. Please come forward, provide your name and address, and it's going to be limited to a 3-minute time period.
Carl Green, 3436 English Hills. Well, I can do this under 3 minutes. After some research and investigating the issue of easement, which seems to be a big issue, over English Ridge portion of English Hills Drive, that's us guys, from Steve Visser to English Hills condominiums. These are my arguments. The easement alone is not sufficient to give a new developer rights over the English Ridge portion of the English Hills Drive, which is our 28 units. The easement is expressly stated to be for, I quote, access across the property and for the placement of any road or underground utility of this property. We're talking about access, road, and utility. This easement alone is not sufficient to give a new developer rights over English Ridge portion of the English Hills Drive. The easement is to English Hills condominiums, not to the new developer and not to the general public. English Hills Condo Association cannot grant our easement with, or we had with English Hills condominium to others. Our portion of English Hills Drive is owned by the English Ridge condominium residents, and we are the only ones who has the right to grant an easement to others over our property. We have the right to stop a developer or the public who would want to go through our property from entering on our portion of English Hills Drive. The easement English Ridge granted to English Hills was for an intended burden, the houses that were built. Michigan default rules would favor our easement. Michigan case law seems to disfavor the changing of the burden of an easement. English Hills condominium does not have the right to increase our burden. Thank you.
Please withhold any applause. I just want to give the information and have a conversation. Thank you.
My name is Mary Kay Greening. I live at 3436 English Hills Drive. Here are some important facts regarding the history of the developments of English Hills condominiums and English Ridge condominiums. In 1989, Steve Visser of English Ridge Condos owned a parcel of land on which Street A, a portion of English Hills Drive, would be built. In 1989, Joel Langlois of English Hills Condos owned the parcel adjacent to Steve Visser's property. Mr. Langlois needed to access his property through Mr. Visser's property in order to begin developing his project. Mr. Visser granted an easement for road access and utility access across his parcel of land so that Mr. Langlois could develop his project. English Hills expected to build approximately 50 or 64 units over the course of several years. By 2002, a total of 56 units were completed, with the last few units built on Birdie Drive Northwest. No further units were expected to be built. A copy of the original plan shows that the development where, this is the copy I received from Paula Preed, and the development property that Matt Frayne owns had only 15 units on that property, according to what English Hills had originally projected. 15 units. Regarding the 1989 joint agreement, this was considered as an exchange of mutual benefits. Number 4 on that joint agreement says English Hills Condominiums Limited agrees to include any condominium units built on the Visser development property with their original master deed for the purpose of maintaining and managing as one condominium association.
You have 1 minute left.
Cost to accomplish would be paid by Visser. In March of 1999, Steve Visser filed article of incorporation for English Ridge Condominium Association. Clearly, Mr. Visser intended his property and condos to be separate from English Hills condos. In March of 2000, Mr. Visser opted to not join the English Hills condo master deed, and he filed for his own master deed for his condominiums. Lieber 4990, page 052. Therefore, English Ridge condominiums are the only ones who could allow an easement to any other parcel through our property to access 4 Mile Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to come forward?
Thank you. Carol Bornowich, 3258 Abington Drive. I will agree that Northridge has been very successful. It is intended to extend to Bristol. However, the traffic study done in 2003 for the golf course project they projected that 46% of that traffic would head east through the Coventry connection. At that time, they projected 2,400 and some trips. With the development along 4 Mile in Northridge, anyone going east of Bristol is not going to go west to Walker to get on the expressway. They're going east to Alpine to get on the expressway. So that number is exponentially increased. I have one question for the developer with regard to the second condition that you imposed. He stated during his presentation that the Orchards connection, that's just out of the question. As a planning commission and as a citizen, I'd like to hear more of an explanation as to why. And was it even explored? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'll be brief as given the discussion you had earlier tonight. My name is David Welk. I live at 3345 Ipswich Drive. Thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts with you tonight. I live with my wife and 2-year-old son at 3345 Ipswich Drive, right next to the proposed development at 1204 4 Mile Road. We're expecting another baby in December, and it's my children and the many others in the neighborhood for the reason why I'm speaking here tonight. I urge you, we'll skip that because we've already said that. Let me paint you a picture. Why don't birds get electrocuted when they sit on a high voltage line? Well, the answer is they're only touching one line. There's no energy differential. But when a bird touches 2 lines at once, that's when the voltage is created and the bird is electrocuted. And that's what this plan would do to our neighborhoods. Right now, both my neighborhood and the English Hills Condo Association are like isolated wires, quiet with no through traffic. But once the development links us together, the connection between Alpine Avenue and 4 Mile creates that difference. Commuters will absolutely begin cutting through to bypass Alpine Avenue congestion between the I-96 and 4 Mile. I know the plan currently includes no through traffic and private drive signage, but let's be honest, every day, Alpine Avenue, I see drivers ignore no left turns, do not block intersection signs, and regularly run red lights. So why should we expect them to follow signs in our small neighborhoods? I'm not opposed to the development. Growth is good and it reflects our thriving community, but this plan introduces serious and unnecessary risks. And so I respectfully ask you to table the site plan until a full traffic evaluation can be had, evaluating the impact of connecting 4 Mile and Alpine Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Steve Gilman. I live at 3347 Gulfview Drive. We're the first driveway to the right just after turning off English Hills. Very happy with what I hear in the deliberation from this commission. I want to thank you for that. Jacob, I think you said something earlier about that there still seems to be some looming conflict. A big part of the conflict is that the English Hills and English Ridge Board of Directors were pulled together into meetings with the developers, but they were doing that, at least from an English Hills standpoint, at the rest, from a standpoint that the English Hills co-owners did not support that effort. We had decided, if I talked to no less than a dozen of our neighbors in English Hills, I'm a former president of the board, were they in favor of trying to give way to this easement? And 100% of the time, the answer was no. They would choose to litigate this in court, to get this in front of a judge, so that they would have the burden of proof of trying to go past this. We dealt with this one time before, when the former owner of this property came in and wanted to develop that, and we said, no, that expired, we don't want that developed. And so we fought it at that time, but it never went to litigation. We've been, and I will tell you, we have been what feels like a threat from this developer to say the title company will litigate this and there's no amount of money that would stand in their way to push this project down our throats. I will tell you that over the last 4 years, 5 years, we've lived there now for almost 9, that in the wintertime, 5 mailboxes have been knocked down in our neighborhood just when the roads get a little bit slippery, because the roads are so narrow when a car tries to pass. We are virtually on the edge of the road, and when the road gets a little bit slippery, if the roads aren't bare or haven't been addressed yet, we have had neighbors' mailboxes get knocked down.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. So if you were to take a vote to our HOA at this point in time, to ask them, because we require a 2/3 vote in order for this to even be considered, the vote would go no. The vote would say litigate it. And I've heard you say that the city attorney's given an opinion, rendered opinion, but my question is it rendered opinion based on their spin that they have put on this, or has it been based on a true neutral opinion? Those are just things that haven't really been addressed, and there is a lot of conflict. We have had 7 board members, I believe, over the last 5 months, because of the amount of stress that have been put on our board members, most of them senior citizens, that are just trying to serve their community. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is David Lightfoot. I live at 3349 English Hills Drive. I live at ground zero. I happen to be the home that you hear so much about, not in my backyard. This is literally in my backyard. I don't want to talk about what's been said time and time again. You got 50 pages of materials. I know you had a good time reading all 50 pages from all of us. However, I have a couple of questions. First question for the city engineer. What's the setback distance from my home to the road? Do you know that?
You can pose those and then we can talk about them thereafter.
Okay. The second question I would add, my driveway backs directly out to the road, to the stub. How do I get out of my driveway when traffic is going back and forth, as it will be a great deal? It's very unsafe. There's a lot of traffic going to be for that position there. And I have a small dog. There are a lot of small dogs around that are walking. That's a prime place where people go. There's a whole line of pine trees that are along that area. And the road today, people come whipping down by there thinking they're going to go through and have to stop in that turnaround and stop in the turnaround and turn around. It is a very, very unsafe situation. I don't know how we're going to be backing up out of our driveway and getting on the road, because it has to be that's the way to be on our driveway. I'm really concerned about what will happen with the roads. And I don't think we need to talk about them anymore, because you've heard about them ad infinitum. But I'm very concerned about being, yes.
1 minute remaining.
That's okay, I'm done.
Thank you. And again, we want to narrow this, we're trying to look at what's been presented this evening, what's different. We had very good comments and perspective that was shared with us when this came through back in May. But we're trying to focus in on what the information came this evening, whether there's something specific that should be shared now with the planning commission.
Hi, my name is Eric Fry. I live at 1145 High Point. I'm the president of the association there at English Hills. In exhaustive meetings with the developer, we did come up with the idea of the choke point, and then we have to, we also talked about some tabletop speed bumps. Then I also told him that we had to get the approval of our association before we could move forward with any of this. And I'm waiting for the final proposal. And he's starting to change, started getting changed again. We kind of came to agreement in principle on the choke point, which will keep our community from becoming a rat run. And that's everybody's biggest concern. We don't want to be a shortcut for everybody, so we want to mitigate any rat run situation we possibly can. And like I said, we have to get our association's approval on it yet, which I haven't submitted it to everybody for a vote yet. I don't know if you guys are aware of that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
My name is Jer Han Hawkins, 3377 English Hills Drive. And I want to let you know how much I appreciate serious consideration of this issue that's facing our neighborhood. I think the most important thing that I heard tonight that was new was one of your commissioners said, "We serve the community first and foremost." I think that is an astounding comment because you really do. You serve the community, not necessarily people who want to be developers. I'm sorry that that piece of property was landlocked and that there are, so many limitations on the egresses that are in the ordinance that we just we can't offer anything because we don't own any extra property to help alleviate that problem. So as a community, English Hills is being put in danger. And I think a lot of you have recognized it. And to me, it seems that go with your conscience. Recognize you are representing people in a community who really love where they live, support water, and it's time to step up and just take care of the community first and foremost. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My name is Eric Shimke, 3419 English Hills Drive. I'm part of the English Ridge community. And I trust that you had an opportunity to read my personal input because it addressed not my personal interests, but the interests of my association. And I applaud you for reading that because it dealt with the negative impacts upon our condo association values and the assessment that's a part of our ongoing prevention, looking out for our good of our community from liability. Two new things I just want to mention though. One is that I heard tonight, which I had heard all along, just even by Eric Fife, that what is being assumed is agreement between us and the other party to move ahead. That is incorrect. It is on principle. And that as individual owners, we have not been given any additional input based upon the impact. The second issue that I just want to mention is that I had emphasized quite a bit in my presentation, the liability problem. And since that time, I have looked at a number of state laws and even comments by Michigan legislation that addresses the increase in liability, both in my ownership of my condo home itself and in the so-called co-ownership of common areas. And it goes without saying that the liability of our association and the above association are going to increase more than threefold according to statistics.
If one minute remaining.
Thank you. And I will say this, that knowing that liability and a lot of percentages that were talked about in just doing road repair, there's no discussion about taking on liability for bodily injury, decreased value of my property, and other potential lawsuits due to the influx of individuals, cars, and others into our community via this turnover to a public road. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd move to close the public hearing portion.
Okay, got a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll support.
Motion and support. Kyle and Jason, all those in favor, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you very much. Commissioners.
So I guess I just want to summarize here, look at for all of the commissioners our options here. So looking at this, I don't know if Paula wants to outline here directions that we can going forward. And yeah, it sounds like a few of us are mixed feelings on this or against the proposed development as is. What are our options path forward?
If the three options really are to approve with conditions, deny, or table. If there are outstanding questions the board has on specific elements or things that if this were changed, it would meet the ordinance standards, then you can table it, give direction to the applicant in terms of what the board would need to see to be able to make a decision. Otherwise, it's approve or deny. And regardless, I encourage whichever direction, all three, I encourage the board to state why that decision was made. If it's approved, what, in the findings of fact, what's met. If it's denied, what is not met. And if it's tabled, what you need to see from the developer in order to make a decision.
So, again, this is as Paula pointed out, this is a preliminary area site plan review. The zoning allows for residential development on this area. It's also consistent with the master plan. I think the conversations that we're focusing on is safety for those that live along that stretch right now, and safety for those that would be part of this development at the scale that is before us this evening. They modified the plan for that access point off that stretch of English Hills, they've suggested that some signs and directional signs as far as being exit only would be changes from what we saw at that last meeting.
I have a question for city staff, I guess. Has the developer or the applicant met with you at all? Because of the difficulties of nature of the site and the proposed development of any alternative uses that could be feasible?
Not to date, no.
There was a question that was posed as far as whether or not the setback of the private roadway to the house meets code. And I think by and large, there are setback requirements in place. I'm not aware that there's any deficiencies there. And there's also a question with regard to the conversation with Old Orchard Apartments. Did they give any reason why they did not wish to discuss or arrive upon an alternate access point?
I did not talk to Old Orchard. I personally gave the assumption, and I mentioned it at the last meeting, that I'd be going to parking lots or through parking garages to access into them, but I am more than willing to go talk with them, say, hey, is there an access point that you would allow us to use?
Okay.
I took the long-term care facility on the northern point.
Well, Paula actually would know better on the setback requirements.
Within private development, I don't have the original approvals of the English Hills in front of me from the late 80s. So I don't know, as an RPUD development, they could have different setback, requirements there. But I did pull it up on the Kent County parcel mapper and use their measure tool to estimate the distance from the garage in question, where the stub street would connect to this new development. It appears to be 40 feet. The garage door to the road appears to be about 40 feet. And I believe we require, is it 26 from garage to sidewalk? Is that?
You strive for 25 from the front of the garage door to the back of the sidewalk. So that if there's a car that's 20 feet, for example, you can still get around the front or the back to carry things into the house and safely in the house. But I think maybe back to the original question, what we typically do is drive those to the developers and because we're not experts on their site. They spend 10 times the amount of time that we spend looking into these kind of site issues. So we're not the best experts at that.
Thank you. Rob?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is probably not a fair question for you to react to, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I'm reading the section of the ordinance with respect to the access points. And in section 6, which is every permanent dead-end street, whether public or private, should be designed in compliance with city code standards for public right-of-way and easements. So it seems to me the spirit of that is saying if you start restricting, if you have some access point that is not in compliance with the standards for public right-of-way and easements, it's probably not going to qualify. So if you're filling it with speed humps and restrictors, I'm assuming those would not be in compliance with our standards. So the things that were negotiated between the HOA and the developer would seem to me, and I'd like to think about it more, but it would not qualify as a primary point of access because it as proposed, would not meet our standard for public right-of-way. Is that logical or nonsensical?
I'm not sure that's 100% accurate. Scott can speak more to the construction standards for public right-of-way easements. That's an engineering and DPW document. So
I think when it comes to condominium roads or apartment complex roads, it's really been a gray area. Could they go in after the fact and put in speed bumps and not get caught, if you would call it caught? Yes, they have, and they have. But I think if it was something egregious and a real obstacle to emergency access, we would hope that our fire inspectors and police staff who are out checking on these areas would would call that out and have some kind of review on it. But it's a gray area.
So if I can follow up, Mr. Chairman, so if an original plan came for review, for, say, a condo project, for a private road, and it narrowed down to basically force the motorists to go down to a speed of 10 miles an hour, would that be approved? Would that be considered a legitimate compliance with the ordinance, or is that kind of a gray area as well?
I think it's a gray area, but I think we have a really good program here with the way that we process things through staff and through site plan review. Something like that's going to get discussed. And fire department, police department are going to make comments, and then they would point out if they thought it was a real concern or not.
Thank you.
Mark, you
Just thinking about making a motion, but I'm not, every time I get close, someone else caught up, one of the other board members say, so, you see me just kind of reach forward and pause it, I'll give it another moment.
Okay.
All right, I'll make a motion then. It seems like, I don't see any way to make, to satisfy what's on our motion sheet for conditions 5 and 7 with the connections to these two neighborhoods. But since the developer hasn't yet had a robust conversation with the apartment complex there, I move to table a site plan for new residential development featuring 30 residential condominium units on new private streets, public and sanitary sewers at 1204 4 Mile Road, PIN 411302252010, subject to the following conditions based on the finding of facts. I'll just skip down to the problematic ones. The location of proposed uses, layout of the sites, and its relation to the street shall not be such that traffic to, from, and within the site and assembly a person in connection therein will not be hazardous or inconvenience to the project or surrounding area. And the plan odor, light, or other external effect from any source whatsoever which is connected with the proposed use will not adversely affect the adjacent and neighboring land uses. So pending the applicants coming back with a solution in with information about connecting through the apartment, that's what I'd like to see.
Okay, and those affect the draft findings affect items 5 and 7?
Yes, 5 and 7.
Okay. Is there support? Support by Elena. Okay, do you have any questions about the motion?
Yeah, my main concern is that it's going to be delaying stuff longer, and I don't know, I feel like we're going to provide the same standstill where we are at the moment. Again, working in permitting and development for 10 years or so, I can see when we're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place here. I don't know if they granted a lot of time, which has been done so already, to address the same issues, will remediate our issues that we have.
I was gonna move to deny, but if we haven't talked to the apartment yet, I didn't want to close the door on them.
Close the door, check them all.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Unless there's no other conversation about it, so we'll take action on the motion. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Okay, I think we've got 5 to 2, so we'll table action on this. Give the applicant the opportunity to be either with one of the neighboring properties in order to achieve an alternate access point into this area of the property. As that would come back to us, would there be notice given to the neighbors? Okay, so once that's completed, they'll come back to the planning commission again, and you'll be given notification ahead of time so that you're able to attend that meeting if you so choose.
Does the board have any additional direction regarding that point for the developer, or anything that you would like me to have in hand before it goes on a future agenda?
Well, I think one thing in particular is this will give time for maybe a final action, an agreement perhaps between the HOA and the developer. So this will, well, that's, again, that would be coming
And yeah, I would like to see physical copy or some sort of, again, we talked about a study for the alternate secondary access routes.
But I agree, Mr. Chair, if the members of the HOA are saying this thing is not going to be ratified by the owners, well then having it is kind of irrelevant. So it seemed to me I'd like to, if we do get a second access that we're comfortable with, it's going to have to be contingent on a satisfactory agreement between the HOA and the developer. And if these terms change, then it's going to have to come right back to us. So it seems to me that it would be better, but it's up to the HOA and the developer, to determine whether or not the membership is going to approve this. Because if not, they're back to the drawing board, it's going to change the terms, and then if there is something that the HOA approves with the developer, then we'll have a final product for us to take a look at, because there may be additional restrictions, additional provisions, and so forth. So right now, it's an agreement in principle with the leadership of the HOA, but not necessarily the membership.
And that's what brought my point up earlier about, the feedback that we've received versus what's been presented before us, and that this was supposed to be resolved before this meeting and stuff.
For me personally, even if the HOA, even if the issue of the easement was solved, that doesn't solve the problems with potential cut-throughs. It doesn't solve the problem with the residents of the Ipswich neighborhood, unless the second access road goes to Alpine. I don't see a way, for me personally, that conditions 5 to 7 would be clear.
Well, they gave you enough direction to work with the applicant.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for coming out this evening.
Thank you.
Project this evening, please, we're still in a meeting.
That's going to continue on.
I know, but I mean, we needed to stay clear of it. I think that was being stolen. That is right. By getting together with
My message, I said, we did not agree with the bridge.
Right, yes.
I will note that in the future. It's on the other side of the building.
Yeah, I am a little shivery.
We do that on purpose to keep the meetings going.
Gentlemen? Would you people, I got it.
He's gonna shut the door.
I got it, no problem.
It's to be known now. It's to be known.
I'll just get the door for you here.
No. But when is this fixed? When they want.
Second.
All right. Okay, now we'll move on to the next public hearing. This is involving Cambridge Grove Phase 4 project. And again, Paula, if you could introduce the project for us, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This project is coming to you for an amendment to an approved PASP, an FASP review, and a condominium review. Lots of moving pieces, but this is how these ones tend to go. So this is the Cambridge Grove PUD, as was previously approved. This is from the Phase 3 approval. That's where this overall PASP comes from. The original PSP for Cambridge Grove was approved in 2005. It would need to be amended because the proposal today changes the PASP in a few ways. Primarily, it's this most southerly section here. This is facing north on Richmond Street. As you can see, if I'm going to switch back and forth here, you can see it was originally approved for single-family lots. And the proposal before you now is to change this southerly portion. It's a portion of Phase 4 and Phase 5 into a traditional condominium rather than a site condominium. So rather than single-family homes on their own lots that are their private property within the condominium, and then there is common property. This would be a traditional condo where there's a lot more common property than you own your individual unit. It's a standalone unit, doesn't share walls, it's not duplexes or triplexes, they're single family, but a traditional condo. That is the change. Another change is this access here, this Piccadilly Lane. There's a connection here. If I'm going back and forth again, you can see that was not proposed previously. That was an addition actually after the staff site plan review committee, because we're discussing access, and safety with access is a common talking point lately. Phase 3 here all comes back to this point on Phase 1. As you would add in a Phase 4 and a future Phase 5, they would only, all of those homes would have come back to this one single access point. And their proposal for Phase 6, where that would loop back and connect to Phase 2 up here, wouldn't happen for another 10 years. And that's a long time to have all of those units on one single access point. As you can see, this is something that the city thinks about on all of the residential projects that come in. And so the developer made some adjustments, and there is this access proposed here that would connect Phase 4 and Phase 2 with this next phase of development, and that would alleviate the single access point for many of those units. So there would still be some as we get in here, but there is 2 access points there. So that is an improvement we've seen and are happy with. With that improvement there, previously there was a stub street here roughly where this blue section is, and to the west here is Talmadge Township. The connection point there has been moved to the south, and it is now in Phase 6 down here. So there is still a proposed stub street to the west for in case there is future development that might connect. And so that is kind of an overview of the PASP. The original PASP had 145 single-family lots. The new PASP has 104 single-family lots and 32 lots in the traditional condominium development for a total of 136, which is 9 fewer homes than in the original PASP. So a reduction of total units, although the density in the condo area is a little higher, it's still acceptable, but there is more open space preserved in the southeastern corner of the site. As the previous, you can see there was a cul-de-sac going back in there, and the updated adds that to the preserved open space within the overall development. Are there any questions about the PASP amendment before I move on?
I just had one question about the preserved area. Is that something where, once it's set, is that it's set, or down the road, way far down the road after this is developed, that can be accessed?
It is set. There was a conservation easement placed over much of the site early on, and as with phase 4, that area labeled nature park there would need to also be put under a conservation easement. So that it can't be developed. Part of this site, some of the slightly higher density there, it balances out the site with some of that open space preservation. There are also a few, there's an item of a path through the nature park that would be developed with phase 4. It's shown on, it's a little difficult to see, but it comes back and connects to the, around the cul-de-sac somewhere over here, and that would be developed with this phase. This development has done a similar thing previously. There is the Cambridge Park tucked in here. That was developed, I believe, with phase 3, and that, so it was on the plans. They got developed when the development came to that area. So a similar thing with the path through the nature park. If there aren't further questions about that, I'm going to jump down here to look in more depth at this phase 4 component. You can see a little bit of that nature trail there coming back and connecting to the cul-de-sac. With the change from the single-family homes in the site condominium to the traditional condominium area down here, it is public roads through most of the development. The traditional condo would be private road. So it would switch in this area that makes a slightly narrower road, and they're showing sidewalk on one side of the road, as we've seen and has been approved by the board in several other traditional condominium developments, such as Meadow Springs off Kinney and the one under construction, Tallman Woods off Cummings. So that's something that we've done before, and that's what they're proposing here. The applicant met with the staff site plan review committee in late July, was provided feedback. I've already noted some of the changes that came with that, including this access road here, Piccadilly. The plans that are presented here, in my estimation, meet the City of Walker zoning ordinance regulations as to use, setbacks, parking, loading, and lighting. The additional items I wanted to draw your attention to one is lot size regulations. In the zoning ordinance, the RPUD1 district, as this whole site is zoned, refers back to the A district, a single family district. That district has a minimum lot size of 11,880 square feet and a minimum width of 90 feet. In this project, if you were looking closely, you might note some of the lots are smaller than that, or narrower, or not narrower, but smaller. That's because when the original PASP was approved, it was approved with a minimum frontage of 90 feet and a minimum area of 9,500 square feet. All lots within the site condominium portion of the development meet those requirements, and that's what I was referencing earlier. That was the trade-off for the large provided open space, the nature park area, and the public, or the park common space internally to the development. Slightly smaller lots, but more public common space. So the lot size regulations are good. From my review, they are all in line with the approved PASP. Sidewalks are shown on both sides of the road within the site condo and on one side of the road within the traditional condo. As I mentioned, the Planning Commission is encouraged to discuss and note the approval motion if the sidewalk on one side of the road in the traditional condo is approved, because that is a slight deviation that the board can make but should be noted. I already mentioned the substreet. There is a proposed substreet. It has been moved. Traffic concerns. Traffic along Richmond Street and at the intersection of Richmond and Wilson has been a key discussion point in previous phases of this project. And as you may recall, at the recent review of a proposed neighborhood expansion on the north side of Richmond, which is immediately to the north of this development. When phase 3 of Cambridge Grove was approved in 2021, the developer was required to have a traffic impact study report prepared. And the traffic from this development has been a known quantity and has been accounted for in analyses in this area since the original approval in the aughts. And so this is not additional traffic being proposed in the area. This has already been accounted for traffic that would be developed now, but has been a consideration for quite some time. Then I mentioned that the nature trail was stated on the PASP as originally approved that it will be established during phase 4, and so that would be a requirement in the proposed motion. It notes that the trail be built before any phase 5 plans return to the Planning Commission. So giving the developer some time to get that done, but that it must be done before the board would move forward on future phases. And then the site condominium review is an additional component. The entire project was originally developed as a site condominium with private lots and common elements for shared use by all members of the site condominium. And so that must be reviewed, the next phase of that. So that's the phase 4 portion here. And the traditional condos must be developed in accordance with the Michigan Condominium Act, but don't go through the exact same approval process as a site condominium does. So that's what I've got for you. There's a long list of proposed approval conditions for an approval. One, the sidewalk, the developer would be required to submit a street tree escrow for the cost of street trees in the site condominium portion. The developer will need to make the next of their 3, it would be the second of their 3 agreed upon payments toward future improvements at the intersection of Wilson and Richmond. We discussed this previously with the phase 4 approval. There was an agreed upon $50,000 contribution toward that road improvements, and that was agreed to be in 3 payments as each of those 3 phases come in. So with phase 4, they would need to make the second of those 3 payments. The applicant should submit a set of individual lot grading sheets consistent with the approved grading plan and MDO table, and updated plans and the nature trail. So there's a lot of things there. Many of them call back to previous approvals and just making sure things that were agreed upon previously get done in accordance with those approvals. But I don't have any outstanding issues or concerns with the development, just making sure that all of those things that were part of the very detailed review that took place before get carried through with every phase that comes in.
Thank you, Paul. Covered a lot of ground there. Commissioners, any comments or questions? Is this south of Richmond?
Yes, it is. Here, let me pull it up on, I had this up for this specific purpose. So here we are in Walker. This is Richmond and Wilson. This is the development here. Phase 3 has been developed and is an active building site with 3 or 4 homes, maybe more coming up right now. I drove through it this afternoon. You see a lot happening back there. So this road continues down, and then there's this middle road, and there you don't see them today, right now, because this aerial is a couple years old.
Yeah, there's a lot of construction going on there now,
Yeah.
and I thought, have we approved that, or?
Yes, so
Okay,
this is the old PASP. The phase 3 is what's under construction now. It's hard to see on this map, but you can kind of see these thicker lines here. So this road was extended down here, currently terminates in a temporary cul-de-sac. Same with this road here, Stratford Lane, which carries through here and ends in a temporary cul-de-sac. And there's homes being constructed on both of those.
I was impressed with the nice area that was. I think it's well done. Okay. Now we'll move along to Scott Connors, City Engineer.
Paula covered just about everything I can think of. I did a really good job. Maybe I'll just hit a couple high points here. it wouldn't be a Cambridge Grove development if I didn't say something negative, so Ken could,
Let's give it a try.
something like that. But I think the layout is something that we can work with, and we understand the need for that to go to, part of it to go to condos. I think he's probably going to mention too that the wetlands area in green there has actually grown, which kind of helps to force a little bit of a change in the layout. And wetlands don't always stay right where they are. It fluctuates over time, and we can't rely on a wetland determination from 20 years ago. It has to be fresh. So, as you might expect, phase 4 and phase 5 have to be freshened up, and here we are. So the real concern, I think, originally when I provided comments for this was the long cul-de-sac, and I wrote about that at the beginning there. In fact, I couldn't be at site plan review, but the police chief called me before the meeting and said, we gotta fix this, we can't have this, and so we're all on the same page when it comes to this redundancy and continuity thing. And when I gave him my notes, he was very happy that we had agreed on that. So what they've done here is they've taken Piccadilly and made a connection there in the public road section of phase 4, and that helps to eliminate what's already a little bit of a long cul-de-sac, ties that all together. They removed the Piccadilly connection to the west into Talmadge Township, but I did reach out and I talked to Mark Bennett over there in Talmadge Township, and they do not have any current plans from that, the farmer that owns that property. They have talked to us before about it, and they absolutely want that connection, but as of right now, there's no point on a plan that we have to match. So they can move that connection to the south in phase 6, which they've done, and I think that's going to be okay. I had some comments on here that are a little bit more picky for, final area site plan kinds of things, like making sure that the hydrants show. I do think that they're on the plan, they're just kind of washed out and all the different things that are shown in such a busy plan here. But we want to make sure that that's very clear. The sidewalk around the end of Blaketon Court at the top of that picture there. We want to make sure that it's moved back so that we have appropriate grass parkway there for snow storage and things, because that's going to be a really tough spot to take care of. The sidewalk, for example, is going to be maintained by the association, because that will have the common property boundary there. So we have to make sure that it's moved back and it's reasonable for somebody to clean up. If it's right up against the road at the end of the cul-de-sac, it's the worst spot possible. So we've got a couple comments like that. You also noticed that they do have some 90-degree bends in the private portion. But you can kind of see on this picture here on Chambers Court, they do have a much larger corner on that 90-degree bend, and that's so that you can get a fire truck through there, you can get a moving truck through there, all the kinds of things that need to get through. And so in a private development like that, if they want to have that geometry, we're okay as long as they can pass that width so that we can still get through and then account for future residents in there and the kinds of things that they need. And really the last thing is the cross section through the condos. They were proposing 2 11-foot lanes. The minimum that we've approved in a condo, I pulled a picture from Meadow Springs and attached it. The minimum we've seen is 2 12-foot lanes with a 5-foot concrete sidewalk immediately adjacent. And that gives them about the tightest cross section that we're comfortable with. So we would recommend that they use that instead of the 11-foot lanes. Really, that's about it for us. We'll probably have some more comments about drainage if this goes to final area site plan, but we'll work that out then. Oh, this is the final area site plan. Well, I have to start over. I think the grading issues that they're going to have to work through the phases so that they can stand alone. So if they do phase 4, we don't know if phase 5, phase 6 are ever going to happen. So we have to make sure that the drainage is appropriately taken care of there, so that if it never happens, it's still covered for everybody. Those are really the details, I think. And then as far as the overall traffic impact, you might remember, some of you might remember that there was a $50,000, I believe it was $50,000 contribution that was made by the developer as part of a concession to account for some work at Richmond and Wilson. We can't have the developer install a traffic signal there because MDOT won't approve a traffic signal there. But that money goes in there for design and for the kind of processing that we have to do to put in a center turn lane, which is the first step to then allow for a potential traffic signal in the future. And it's kind of a sidebar, we actually have a project that we just began working on Richmond Street to build a center turn lane from Gordonshire east to Wilson, and on the other side of Wilson to Deerfield. So there would be center turn lane, there'd be curb and gutter, proper drainage and sidewalks, so that when MDOT is prepared to widen and put in a signal in the future, we'll be ready, and all of our infrastructure will be in place. So it's not gonna happen overnight, it's probably gonna be 2 years away, but we think that's gonna help a lot with the pedestrian movements, and it may even spur MDOT to come up with some fast money, you know, to kind of add to our project, to make the improvements in Wilson as well. Now I've said too much, I'm thirsty. All staring at.
Any comments or questions at this point?
I have a question about that cul-de-sac at Blaketon Drive. We would plow that cul-de-sac then, or how would that work there then, if the sidewalk's gonna be maintained by the?
Yeah, so we would plow that would become the terminus for our public road.
Okay.
But we don't take care of the sidewalks. They're always done by the adjacent property owner. So in this case, the adjacent property owner would be the association. And we just don't want to put them in that position where the sidewalk is almost unmaintainable in the winter. We want the residents to be able to walk around that just like any other.
Would that be like written into like the condo association bylaws kind of?
I'm not sure we'd even have to write that in there because it would just be their frontage.
City ordinance.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? We'll turn it over to the developer.
Well, thank you for your time. I know it's getting late. Paula did a wonderful job, very, very wonderful, actually. Staff was wonderful to work with, Scott. I'm not mad at you at all, so we got good things going here. Yeah, so we started this project in 2007, it's been a while, and we've successfully done quite a few good things there. I believe that the connection between Kennewa and Stratford Lane is wonderful. We lost some lots in that effort, and created some corner lots, so that's a little negative from the developer standpoint, but I think it's a wonderful thing for the development both now and in the future. One of the things that wasn't mentioned is, and you can kind of see it on the plan, and that hasn't changed, is we will supply our road up to the southern property line in that cul-de-sac that's temporary there. So there would be additional outage to Leonard someday, for example. So our density is lower. We've increased our green space. Prior to Paula being here, when phase 1 went in, we actually built that walkway all the way through. And so we're gonna alter that a little bit because of the development, but that was originally put in with the wood chips and stuff way back in 2007. Not so sure anybody used it, but I'm just saying it was done. So all in all, we're very pleased with this and seek your blessing on it. I don't know if you have any other questions, but one thing that I do want to mention, kind of not related to this, but in a way, and I had an email correspondence with Paula earlier this week. This is more for your information, so if I can approach the chair. I received a relatively strange email on Walker letterhead. Basically, all kinds of fees and all this stuff, and it wanted wiring instructions. And I had several people look at this, and they're like, oh, that's legit. I'm like, I bring checks here constantly. So, for what it's worth, Paul was like right away, no, that's fraudulent, but there's somebody scamming your system here, and maybe it's worthwhile to let other developers or people know that wires are not a thing you guys do, so.
And Terry, I'll take that if you like.
Yeah, this is not the first, this is, I believe, the third time I've been made aware of this happening. When I inform IT when this happens, they tell me that they're aware that this is a scam. People wait till the public information is shared. The applicant's application is part of the public information regarding any case that comes here. There's enough information on there for someone to fraudulently approach them based on the details in the public information. and try to request funds. That does not come from the city. It is not something the developer should have to deal with. But there's also very little we can do because that information is made public. And so communication between staff, who handles a lot of these things, and then developers is the best we can do.
Maybe we could put on the application something like the city of Walker does not require or request ever wire fund transfers or something.
It was just, and the timing was very unique because it was a Monday morning email and it was like, you got to get this in before the meeting. You know what I mean? And it was like, well, it's Wednesday, so wait a minute. So the other thing that I want to comment on that Scott talked on it just briefly, with the reduction of units, the first staff meeting that we had that I hadn't really even thought about, but, and not to quote him, but roughly a residential home generates between 10 and 12 traffic impacts a day, where a standalone condo development is more in the 5 to 6 range. So if you look at the traffic impact, it's going to be considerably less because we've taken 32 units in this case, we've lost 9, so 32. That's a big number, and I think that's a good thing for all the little tots in here and for the impact, and I'm very excited about the intersection too. That's great information. So if you have any questions development-wise, I'd be glad to answer them, and I have Paul from Rosine here if you have any technical questions. So.
Rob?
Just one, you're comfortable with all of the proposed conditions?
Yes. Yeah.
Anybody else?
Mine's partially related to this project, but also not. The email that you did receive, was that from a City of Walker email address or?
No.
Okay, well, yeah.
I left my phone in the truck, but that.
It was a cleverly developed email address, but not accurate, so.
It says it right on top, from City of Walker Planning Commission, planning.cityofwalker.gov.usa.com. Okay, so. Covered. I think there's a little more letters in there than all his emails to me, but, so.
Just curious, thank you.
With regard to the sidewalk, I think you've indicated some precedents as far as in the condo area happening on one side of the street. My question is with respect to the relative location of the sidewalk to the pavement, especially on the curve there, but even anywhere along through there, to have a little bit of a parkway to distinguish the roadway from the sidewalk. Yeah, especially with those turns, the 90-degree turn, you're right on top of it, and things are at a minimum.
Hi, Paul Henderson with Rosines. The reason we did that on the end of the cul-de-sac was we're up against a wetland there, so we were trying to minimize the impact to the wetland. So we hugged it up against the curb to do. So if we pull it out, we might just move the cul-de-sac over a little bit so we're not impacting the wetland. That's why we did that, the only reason.
Yeah, the cul-de-sac's not, it's a little offset as well, so I think if you offset that back the other way, you'd have all the room you need and it wouldn't impact any of your lots.
That's it. That's exactly what I was thinking, Scott.
Okay, thank you. It's amazing to see what's been developed over the years. I've been here long enough to be able to see from their early part, and you've done a wonderful job there. The homes are stupendous in terms of their appearance and their size. It's a good part of the community. It's part of the residential area. So I compliment you for what you've done thus far and continuing to work with staff to come up with some very practical observations. Staff for bringing it up. And for you to work with them, that's always good. That's everybody wants that.
Yep. Yeah, no, very, very high quality people in that project, and that's exciting to see. So.
Yeah.
Good.
All right, any other questions? We've got a sample motion here. I think that we, public hearing?
It is estimated as a formal public hearing.
Okay, I'm sorry. We have,
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll second.
okay, motion by Elena, supported by Jacob, to open the public hearing. All those in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Any public comment?
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll support.
Motion by Elena, supported by Jacob, to close the public hearing. All those in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. We've got a draft motion in front of us.
I will make a motion for case number 25-012, A, 1792 Kennewatt Avenue, PSB. Based on the application material provided, I make a motion to approve the amendment to the approved preliminary area site plan and final area site plan for phase 1 of Cambridge Grove PUD at 1792 Kennewatt Avenue Northwest, subject to the following conditions and based on the findings of facts noted below.
Elena, can you please turn your microphone
Thank you, sorry. Do I start over?
on? If you could start over at based on the application material.
Yep, based on the application material provided, I make a motion to approve the amendment to the approved preliminary area site plan and final area site plan for phase 4 of the Cambridge Grove PUD at 1792 Kennewatt Avenue Northwest, subject to the following conditions and based on the facts and the facts below. Conditions of the final area site plan review: 1, the applicant shall address all items outlined in the city engineer's report dated August 14, 2025. 2, the board's decision regarding sidewalk on one side of the road within the Cambridge Cottage area is approved. 3, the applicant shall submit a street tree escrow check to the city of Walker to cover the cost of street trees in the site condo portion of phase 4, lots 73 to 88, prior to the issuance of any building permits for phase 4. 4, the applicant shall make the required payment of $16,667 towards the future improvement at the intersection of Wilson and Richmond as agreed upon in the memorandum of understanding established as part of the phase 3 approvals. 5, the applicant shall submit a set of individual lot grading sheets consistent with the approved grading plan and MBO table prior to the issuance of building permits. 6, the applicant shall provide 3 sealed sets of civil engineering plans incorporating the recommended conditions to the Community Development Department prior to the issuance of building permits. 7, the nature trail must be fully constructed and open for use by residents before any future phases of Cambridge Grove PSAP will be brought to the City Commission for review. Findings of facts per section 11.02.G5, the major amendment to the approved preliminary area site plan to change the layout in phase 4, 5, and 6, and to allow traditional condominium development within phases 4 and 5 as described in the final area site plan set dated August 6, 2025, does meet the standards contained in 7 of the zoning ordinance. The final area site plan is in substantial compliance with the previously approved preliminary area site plan as amended herein, consisting of maps and accompanying written material. The PUD does comply with the uses permitted in the RPUD 1 district and the uses approved within the related PSAP.
Support.
Okay, motion by Elena, supported by Jacob to do what she just described.
What did you say?
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Thank you.
And
Oh, that's
there's one more motion.
I'll do it. Case number 25-012B, site condominium review for 1792 Kennewatt Avenue Northwest. Based on the application material provided, I make a motion to forward recommendation to the City Commission for the approval of the preliminary site condominium plan for phase 4 of the Cambridge Grove residential development, featuring 16 single-family sites condominium lots facilities at 1792 Kennewatt Avenue Northwest, subject to the following conditions and based on the findings of facts noted below. Conditions of the preliminary site condominium plan recommendations. 1, the applicant shall address all items in the city engineer's report dated August 14, 2025. 2, 2 recorded copies of the updated master deed and condominium bylaw shall be provided to the Community Development Department prior to the issuance of any building permits. 3 public utility easements are recorded and copies provided to the Community Development Department prior to the issuance of any building permits. 4, the applicant shall provide 2 sealed sets of civil engineering plans incorporating the recommended conditions of approval to the Community Development Department prior to the issuance of any building permits. Findings of facts, the proposed site condominium development meets the requirements contained in section 18-10 of the Walker zoning ordinance. 2, the condominium plan as presented is found adequate in regards to the proposed use and occupancy restrictions, utility systems, public and private streets, and project layout and design. 3, the type of lots and proposed uses within the condominium developments are compatible with the existing development in their area and with future development as outlined in the master plan.
Support?
Okay, motion by Elena, supported by Jacob, to conditionally approved as described. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh,
All right, we have, I believe, two items on the 9.3 agenda. We should finally see an industrial building at Northridge and Hendershot from Isser Brothers. They've confirmed for me the 9.3 date, so you've had it before you a few times. Then we also have an indoor shooting range at Northridge and Shippers Drive that will, it's a commercial recreation, so that's a final area site plan and a special land use review. So that's our next meeting in 2 weeks.
the rezoning on Remembrance, what's the status on that?
I have had a few conversations with the applicant. He was pursuing some different options, and so we've been playing phone tag, trying to get that on a future agenda, but no hard date yet when that's returning.
Okay. Anything else?
Mr. Chair, the biggest crowd we've ever had here today?
No.
Huh? No.
Big one.
Got a motion to have support? To adjourn?
Support.
Or by Mark? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.